Good morning, Exeter. How y'all doing? You know, I threatened that my first meditation, which is this meditation, my first in 14 years here, would be something on the order of a true meditation, having everybody breathe, focus inwardly and relax a little bit. But this time around, I think, not twist it up a little bit. If you were here a few weeks ago, you probably heard Emer Page talk about some of her meditative moments over the years of being on places on high, and some of the activities that happened this summer where we were able to hold Galileo's Sidereus Nuncius and a Shakespeare First Folio side by side on a table. Probably for the first time in those two books' histories, they were together. 400 years of text. That was just the start of a really incredible summer for me and my family. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about that today. So one could easily call this report here what I did this summer. And it started, let's go back to about 3 years ago, where I had 13 fellow astronomy teachers hanging around in my classroom around the Harkness table. And as all astronomy teachers do, we look toward the future for what big and huge and amazing events are happening above us in the sky. Because we're always curious about what's coming next. What should we be paying attention to? And one of us said, hey, you know, there's a really cool eclipse happening in 2017. Maybe we should take a look at that. And sure enough, going right across the United States of America from Oregon all the way down to South Carolina was an opportunity that just could not be missed. A total solar eclipse of the sun was going to pass right across our country on August 21st. School was not in session. Well, actually, it was really close to faculty week. And the United States offers a wide variety of weather patterns, which meant that we knew that at some point we had the ability to see this eclipse if only we knew where to go. So naturally, our minds and eyes and brains, everything turned toward looking at the weather. And we gathered 10 years of weather data to figure out where we should be. Yeah, this is what geeks do. It's true, you know. 10 years worth of weather data to determine where the best probability of cloudless skies would be that moment, at that hour of day, about 11:20 in the morning. And it turned out it was going to be the Pacific Northwest, the Oregon coast. But there was a fear that kind of gathered in our minds at that moment. We're thinking, Oregon coast. Let's put this into perspective. There are mountains to the east, oceans to the west. There's a lot of water. So if it's got to be cloudy, it's got to be cloudy. Like really cloudy. And if it's going to be clear, it's just going to be crystalline. But what were the odds? Slightly better than another location. And that other location was this one. Now, zooming in there, you really can't see what that says. In fact, it's kind of flickering. It's magic. I don't know. Something's happening there. But that's the wonderful little town of Casper, Wyoming. Central eastern Wyoming. High plains, about 5,000 feet above the sea level. The Rockies are to the west. And there's this handy set of highways, Route 25 and 20, that literally follows that path right down the center. This path right here, which is the path of the solar eclipse totality, and that is Casper, Wyoming, dead center. Could not have been a better location. All you have to do is get to Denver, Colorado, rent a car, and drive north for 4 hours. It's not bad. We can do that. And the really cool thing about Casper is that since there are rocky mountains immediately to the west, the clouds can pile up in the mountains and leave Casper untouched. And if clouds were to form, we could get on a highway and drive like crazy to find clear skies. This is what eclipse people do. Gotta find a clear sky. So Casper it was. We found Casper, and we started making our plans 3 years ago. I literally rented a hotel room 2.5 years before the event, and the airline wouldn't listen to me 2 years before the event. They said, you know, you have to wait a year. Like, oh. So that day it was available. Get those plane tickets, rent a car, get everything ready. Literally, I got the last hotel room in Casper, Wyoming, and I found the furthest back seat in a Southwest Airlines flight to get out to Denver. Rental car, got one. It said on the rental car slip it was blue, it was really white. Took a picture of it. Strange stuff. The next idea, the next problem, the next thing to solve was to figure out what equipment to bring. Eclipses are a one-time event. What did we want to capture in terms of data and in pretty pictures? What did we want to do? What is that? Server connection. I think we can ignore that. So we went over and we started packing equipment, but we had to make sure that it was something that we could carry on our backpacks and something that would board an airplane without being too heavily scrutinized by airlines and safety and security. A couple of camera bodies, a bunch of lenses, several filters, solar filters, which of course don't look great inside an X-ray machine. They really tore this thing apart and then put it all back together again when they figured out, oh, he's just a crazy eclipse guy. It is what it is. We had about 52 pounds of equipment, including the tripods, all of which carried with about 3 pounds of clothing. Clothing is secondary. We left our humble city of Manchester here and headed west toward Denver National Airport, which is an interesting airport in and of itself. But once in Denver, it was a nice trip. We got to see some of my family. My mom lives down there. Got to catch up with her, which was really nice. Now, you can't see this too well. This is going up north to Casper, Wyoming, and every 10 miles there was an electronic sign that said, heavy eclipse traffic expected between Friday and Tuesday. Well, we were driving on the road, we saw nothing, and the speed limit was 80, so we averaged about 85, naturally. We got there in no time at all, about 4 hours later, cruising through the hills. Eclipse traffic was very low, and we were wondering, what's up with that? Not quite sure. We got to a nice little promontory overlooking the town of Casper, Wyoming. Now, Casper, Wyoming has about 60,000 people, its regular population. It's got a nice downtown, a lot of restaurants. In fact, it was voted for the past 3 or 4 years to be the most family-friendly Western town in the United States. I don't know what that means, but it was family-friendly. We had the whole family, everybody was happy. And talking to people there, had an expectation that there was going to be some 100,000 like-minded eclipse-crazy people like me descending on that town in the next 24 hours. And sure enough, that happened. Casper, Wyoming became the eclipse party town of North America overnight. Roads were closed for 20 miles in every direction. It was a parking lot. Imagine going to a Grateful Dead concert. No. A U2 concert with a one-lane road, in and out. That's what Casper, Wyoming became. Now, Casper is an interesting town because it's famous for oil and for mineral. It really is a mining town. And of those 60,000 people, they're all into service industries or mining or the railroad. Major Santa Fe Railroad passage right through there. But for this weekend, it was everything but that. It was, you can get Eclipse t-shirts here. Hey, you can get an Eclipse glasses, only $14. It was fun. Really interesting town. Real Wild West stuff. Like, you could buy a hat. This didn't come from Casper, but I do have another hat from Casper, which I shall wear at some point or another, when this one finally gives up the ghost. It's close. I just, when you fall in love with a hat, you can't get rid of it. Casper's also home to a really famous geology museum. They have one of the most nearly complete skeletons of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is there in that center photo. And that's me as a trilobite on the far right. I don't make a good trilobite. But the T-Rex is certainly interesting. And it's kind of sad. The one thing that's missing is the head. Oh well, maybe someday they'll find it. I don't know where that might be. Another thing was happening in Casper, which was really, really handy. At the time, the Astronomical League, which is a group of some thousands of amateur astronomers, had decided that Casper would be a great location to hold their annual meeting on August 21st, which is even better. So we were ready. We had thousands of amateur astronomers, and we had an organization, And we had people that were willing to look years in advance to find special locations where we could go observing with some major, has little check boxes here to cover. One, grass is good because grass keeps thermal waves from rising off of the ground. We don't want to be in a Walmart parking lot, for example. If we're using telescopes and whatnot, we want to stay away from things that are radiating too much heat. So we had to have grass. Two, we wanted to stay away from sprinklers. We had to turn the sprinkler systems off on grassy places, right? That's kind of a risk to optical equipment. We also wanted a place where we could turn off all the parking lights. Now, something that we don't think about is that during a total solar eclipse, it gets dark, and all the lights on the streets turn on, which can ruin photography as well. We found this place called the Summit Medical Center, east of town, and the guy who runs it, he's an astronomer. It was great. He said, you can use our property. So we had 200 people show up at that location for this eclipse, and it was just spectacular. On the right-hand side, you can see a screenshot of my cell phone here, and it shows my location, and it says, you are 0 miles from the center of totality. I thought, that's perfect. We got the right location. So that's that feel-good moment when you know you've arrived at the right location. Total geek out, I tell you. Sunrise that morning, a very deep red sun. Out of the Pacific Northwest, forest fires were raging. Really unfortunate for the folks in the Pacific Northwest, and a little bit scary for us because the smoke was headed that way, toward us. Gave us a beautiful sunrise, but it also filled our air with smoke, and we were wondering, maybe this eclipse was going to get clouded out after all, because smoke has a tendency also to help the formation of clouds. It can seed clouds, and that's something that kind of terrified us. But nonetheless, we got there early in the morning, right at sunrise, got ourselves set up, made sure that the family was comfortable. That's my youngest, who's now in Tokyo. She doesn't like early mornings. This was about 6 o'clock in the morning. Found asleep. But the location was beautiful. That is the morning of. The clouds were there, but they're kind of blowing to the south, some smoke to the north. And we were ready. Ready for the inevitable. The eclipse was going to happen. Dozens of people had shown up. In fact, one of the great things that people like to do, go around, visit people, and look at their equipment, check out what they've brought, talk a little bit about where they're from, and get to know your neighbors, so to speak. And so there were telescopes ranging in size from this big to nothing at all, just people with glasses looking at the eclipse. But there was something also serendipitous. It turns out that Exeter is everywhere. And if you've ever had lunch with me and talked about some of my past exploits and whatnot, you know that I've met Exonians in the funniest of locations. One of the funniest of locations was Central Siberia for the last eclipse I was at, trying to get a coffee, and the guy's like, "Nyet, you only have tea." So I ordered a tea, and the guy across the way looked at me and said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Exeter, New Hampshire," expecting, "Where's that?" as a question and response. Turns out he unzips his jacket, exposes, "Exeter, 83. Central Siberia, okay? So this is Brandon Liu. You probably remember Brandon. He showed up in Casper, Wyoming that day. But so did this fellow here. This guy is a doctor, an orthopedic doctor. His name is Dr. David Doctor. His last name is Doctor. And I couldn't resist striking up a conversation with this guy because I had known another Doctor when I was 9 years old, this ophthalmologist who operated on my left eye. Now, if you've also conversed with me, you also noticed that one of my eyes kind of looks that way. He worked on that eyeball so that I could see through it. Magic technology, this guy enabled me to have sight, which was really nice. And his name was Dr. Daniel D. Doctor. This guy, David Doctor. And I couldn't resist. I said, where are you from? And he says, "Connecticut." "Wow, do you know a Dr. Daniel Doctor?" He says, "Oh yeah, that guy, he was my dad." I was like, "Seriously? You know, your dad operated on my eye." He goes, "Oh, that's really great. How's it going?" I'm like, "I can see through it." It's like, "Yeah, that's okay." And then he looked at my name tag. Everybody had a name tag there. And he says, John Blackwell. And he says, Phillips Exeter Academy. He says, no way. And he looked at me and says, class of 78. It's a true story. That guy is a graduate of Phillips Exeter Academy. Kind of mind-bending. But I digress. You came here to look at some pictures. And the pictures are pretty wild. The eclipse, who's been to a total solar eclipse? Who's been in the path of totality, right? It is a pretty amazing event. Literally coming right at you is a wall of darkness as the moon's shadow, the umbra, comes sweeping out of the west and then blocks out the sun's light completely. Stars come out, planets become visible, birds go to sleep, dogs howl. No, I'm kidding. Things happen that are a little bit unexpected. But we were able to grab a video of this event using one of the cameras, taking a picture every 10 seconds. And we just put it all together as one big stream and animated it. Now watch carefully as this video unfolds, because you will see, maybe in the lighting of this church, I'm not sure, you may see Venus pop up here, and you'll also see darkness approach from here and head to the left, which would be toward the east. And I may have to play this a couple of times. Ready? Here we go. There's totality. And totality ended. See how quick that was? Bam. Very quick. We'll play it again. If I can have some luck here. Here we go. And I will duck. And you'll see, I killed it. I killed it dead. There it is. You'll notice something interesting while all that was happening. You see a bunch of people kind of in a flurry up there with their cell phones, like this. It's like, look at the eclipse. Take your phone and, get rid of it. Very interesting event. We had Jupiter, we had Venus, we had Saturn, and the eclipse was taking place dead center of the constellation Leo. A lot of bright stars in that area, which is really exciting for all of us eclipse chasers. The eclipse itself, through the larger telescopes and through the telephoto lenses, gave a view of the sun that was pretty spectacular. There were a number of sunspots, which was fun. And then, of course, the moon taking a chomp out of the sun, slowly covering it up over the course of an hour. And then when totality came, literally, you could hear a pin drop, because after everybody went, they held their breath for 2.5 minutes, which was the length of time totality took place. And we were able to see something that looked a little bit like this. This is the inner corona. Now, there's something physiologically interesting about the human eye you need to know. The human eye does a much better job of what we call high dynamic range imaging than a camera. A camera can take a snapshot of faint stuff or bright stuff, but not really both at the same time. Human eye does a really good job of parsing that out for you. So does your brain. So you can see better imagery with the eye. So we took hundreds and hundreds of images. The camera was just going click, 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 2.5 minutes of just nonstop clicking. Thank goodness the shutter was working well. There's the outer corona. Overexposed the inner corona. The inner corona, going back a little bit, shows some solar prominences and some other interesting filamentary detail having to do with magnetic fields. And then the outer corona extends that out further in terms of radius from the center of the moon or the sun, or both, as the case may be. But through the magic of technology, we can get images like that. And really, you should come to my office or something and get a good look at it on a big screen, because the detail is now phenomenal. We have software that allows us to stack all the imagery from the very faint the brighter inner corona all the way to the faint outer corona, stack them together so that you get a vision that is much more like what the human eye can see. And this is the stuff that scientists are interested in. Going back to the eclipse in general, those 100,000 people, about 10% of those people in Casper were professional astronomers looking to capture this very thing, looking at the outermost corona and compiling it into a large data set so that we can understand the magnetism of the sun and its effect on its outermost atmosphere, the corona. The corona is largely misunderstood. We don't know what really makes it tick. The surface of the sun is about 5,700 Kelvin. It's hot. But the corona is over 10 million Kelvin. That's really hot. Orders of magnitude hotter. Okay, astronomy students, raise your hands, right? Yeah, okay, so you're good. Physicists, good, all right. And then, lastly, what I'm really interested in was the fact that since this eclipse was taking place right in the heart of Leo, the lion, all the stars that were nearby were now visible. We can now replicate an experiment that was done almost 100 years ago. We can look to see if the sun's mass was indeed bending space-time by looking at the position of the stars while the sun was in the way. That's pretty cool. Proving out Einstein yet again. Nothing hugely scientific. We know this to be true. But as a guy with a 500 millimeter telephoto lens and a camera sitting in Casper, Wyoming, that's a pretty cool thing to replicate. So we're working on that right now. We've got all sorts of interesting challenges to deal with, but we're getting close. We're getting close. I'll just conclude by saying, get yourself to a total solar eclipse. You gotta do it. There's another one coming up soon, and if you happen to live in New England, it's gonna go right through New England. So I encourage you, go to Google total solar eclipse. Check out when the next one is that crosses the United States. Get yourself on the center line. Thanks.